Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I think I have some slides. So today I wanted to talk and share with all of you about failure. I know many of you who are either starting your journey or been on your startup journey, you've probably already had a ton of failure. Well, for us in our Kabam story, it's been littered with a bunch of failure over 10 years. And if I had to tell you all of our failures, I don't know how long we'd be here. So I had the great luxury of trying to pick which ones I would talk about. And so in order to inspire and encourage you, I decided to choose the ones that were major failures that turned into successes, so that if anybody can learn from our mistakes in our 10-year journey, I'm more than happy to share. So first, just a little bit more about our company, because I don't know if a lot of people know about us. We've been headquartered in San Francisco. At the height of our company, we were about over 1,000 employees in 6 offices worldwide. 4 of them were what we call development centers or studios that built games. Not a lot of people know, but we started the company in 2006. So it's been around for a while, but we started making games around 2009. There we go. So we've partnered a lot with Hollywood. We've made games for Marvel, Hobbit, Avatar, Transformers, you name it. We've probably either talked with them or have worked with them. And then our investors have been pretty amazing. We've raised over probably $245 million in our 10-year journey, and we just sold our company a couple months ago for over $800 million to a company called Netmarble. It's a South Korean gaming company. Thank you. Thanks for the woo. We're pretty happy. Thank you. These are what some of our games look like today. We like to say that we're AAA console quality right in your pocket. And we pretty much have been mainly working with Hollywood. And happy to talk about that afterwards in terms of why we turned closer to brands. But our journey didn't always look successful. It actually started out with several failures. Our first failure, what people don't know, is we started with a corporate social network. That's how we raised money. I know, I think you even read those words and you're thinking, how did you not know it was gonna be a failure? It was a failure. The co-founding team, with the 4 of us, started out together. We'd meet in coffee shops as well as we were incubated in Keynote Partners. They were our first investor who took a risk on us and said, you know what, why don't you go ahead and work here and we'll also give you capital. Just to remind you, the year was 2006. We were people that were kind of influenced by what was happening in the Valley. So the dot-com crash had happened, but there was this kind of little bit of inkling of hope. There was a term called Web 2.0 that came out. Meebo had just come out, and there was this new framework called Ajax, and that was the thing that was just gonna change the whole internet. And then there was this company called YouTube that sold for over $1 billion. And I think that that was really an inspiration to really bring back a lot of all these amazing companies that you see today and really push the current companies that we're building, such as like Facebook and LinkedIn. Well, for us, during that time, we didn't have any accelerators, no incubators. YC had probably started on the East Coast, but certainly hadn't heard of us and we hadn't heard of them. So we did the traditional route of pounding up and down Sand Hill Road, and we spent some time talking about this corporate social network. So basically we were like, hey guys, it's just like Facebook, but it's gonna be geared towards people who have money. Because we reasoned, hey, college students don't have money. And we spent a couple years at work and we were pretty frustrated with our jobs, so we left and we said, hey, maybe we can do something like this. Well, we found out pretty quickly that we could not do this. So we launched our site, Company Loop. I'm sure you've never heard of this. This is one of the lowest, this is the only thing I could see on the internet that I could find of it. We didn't keep any files of it. That's how bad of a failure it was. And it's like a very low resolution. So that's why now it's probably super blurry up there. But we had tried everything. It took us very quickly to build, about a month. And then we spent about the next 5 months on what we call marketing or growth hack tactics, which was really spamming your friends and family and begging them to please, please, please use the product. And then when that didn't work, we would cold email some people who worked in big companies, as well as we eventually started asking one of our sales friends to come in and train us on how to do cold calls. Eventually, after all of this hard work, we got 1,400 users after 5 months of hard work and 3 product iterations. So we learned very, very quickly that there just was, obviously, this just wasn't going to be a viable business. So we were a little bit at a turning point in terms of a crossroads for us. And one of the things we learned very quickly was that in starting up, no one starts out as competent, and it's the market that decides competence. So if you think about it, the 4 of us were not very competent at all. We grew a company to over 1,000 employees, yet none of us had managed before. We started a company when none of us were founders. And honestly, we never built a product together before. We built products separately and pieces of it. So it was like piecing together an elephant and not really have seen the whole elephant before. And this is what's so fascinating and what's so exciting about building a business that makes impact and value is that you can bring your PhD, you can bring everything that you have to the table, but ultimately the market is going to decide competence. And for us, they said, you guys are incredibly incompetent, especially with Company Loop, and I would probably say so myself. So we had a couple months left of runway, and we were thinking, you know, what are we gonna do with this? We talked to one of our board members to let her know an update on what was going on. At that time, Facebook had come out with a developer platform. And our product manager said, you know what, maybe we should take a look at this. And I remember talking to the CEO after he came back from the board meeting, which is really him and the other investor at the time. And basically I was like, so what did she say about our strategy of moving off of this and moving into this unknown of Facebook? And he basically said, she said, you know what, you should go where the users are at. We're like, oh, that totally makes sense. After 5 months, we only had a little bit of like, a little over 1,000 users, and we were not getting anywhere. And so that was the thing that, that was the thing that we had learned, that we weren't getting anywhere. The one thing that we did have a lot of issues around was that even though your company, you as a company need to build a business and an organization, the business needs to come first. So for us, when we were talking about all the acquisition and all the users, we couldn't even convert users to customers because we're having so many problems at the acquisition point. Like, we only had over 1,000 users, and we couldn't pull them into the funnel to acquire them, then to engage them, to retain them, and ultimately, hopefully, they would become customers. So from that day after the board meeting, this was something really fundamental that we learned, is that if we couldn't make the users come to you, we should go where the users are. And that was something for us that was incredibly fundamental because it really permeated into our culture. You see, Kabam is and has been a very market-driven culture, and I think it's really because of this first failure, that we knew it was so hard to get people to come to us that maybe we should look at growing platforms. And you'll see this theme for us and how it's proven for us over time. So what we did is we put everything that we got into this new Facebook platform. But when we did, one of the decisions we had to make was we could just take this dying product, Company Loop, and just stick it onto Facebook. But instead, we said, you know what? If it's not working over here, do we really think it's going to work on Facebook? One of the things that we were really struck by that we learned, we said, look, what is it that people want? Like, are people going to be sitting there? Do people go home at night and Google about work? And we're like, you know, we don't really do that. Do other people really do that? What is your core competencies as a team? So all of us were actually consumer-based background. And here we were making cold calls. We didn't really know how to set up a sales team. So we're like, you know what? Maybe this isn't really for us. And finally, the third thing we looked at was our passion points. What are the things that we were Googling at night and we were really passionate about? And it turns out what we spent most of our time on is watching TV, because you do that a lot, and watching sports. You do that a lot when you're happy or sad. So we ended up building fan communities on TV shows and sports sports teams on Facebook. So this was a long, long time ago, around 2007, 2008. So if you liked Arrested Development as a TV show, you could download our app and have the quote added to your profile or your favorite character, and then you could connect with other Arrested Development fans. Same thing on the sports page. Well, this amazing success was also our second failure, which was fan communities. So we actually, as I mentioned, we were quite successful. That was our product manager, but we were quite successful in terms of this. Within about a month, within about a weekend, we grew over 1 million users. You could see how excited we were. And then over time, we had grown this fan community to over 60 million registered users. And when ABC wanted to distribute their video on Facebook, they actually didn't call it Facebook, they called us up to distribute their video for us. But at the same time, 2008 was an incredibly special year. The mortgage crisis happened. I think there's many of you who were around when this happened. It was a horrible, horrible time for startups. Outside, the economy was just completely freaking out. Mortgage rates were dropping. In fact, for us, a lot of the funding had dried up. And Sequoia Capital, like one of the most premier VCs in Silicon Valley, sent a deck to their portfolio companies saying, you better get to cash flow positive and RIP good times. And that was just, we saw a lot of our colleagues who were running startups just have a really, really hard time. The ones that were most impacted were ad-based businesses, which just happened to be ours. So the ad-based business was just plummeting, as well as the views on our Facebook platform were just going not in the way that you wanted it to. We had about a $3 million deal with an ad network. They pulled out because they said, you know what, nobody's spending any discretionary spending on this. We've seen our ad go from 80 cents all the way down to 2 cents. And we knew that we were yet faced again with asking ourselves these questions. Which is basically the same 3 questions we asked prior in terms of market. So what was doing really well? Well, we saw there was this little company called Zynga that made a ginormous game called Farmville and loved to send lost cows to their friends and family. And we're like, oh my God, this company is recession-proof. Their business model is completely amazing because they don't rely on ads and they can build a long-term relationship with their customer. The second thing we looked at was our competencies. We're like, well, you know what? We think we can do that. We can build apps on Facebook. In fact, we have almost 100 years of app development for Facebook right here on our team. And finally, our passion points. Well, our CEO is an incredibly passionate gamer, but he didn't like the Farmville type games. He liked the games that were much more mid-core and strategy-based. So that led us into building games, which also has one of our major failures as well. But I'll start out with our success. This was the MVP of our first game, Kingdoms of Camelot, which was our flagship product. So for those that don't know, this was really one of the first of its kind on Facebook, but strategy-based games tend to be, or empire building games, are basically you kind of work your farm, you build your farm, and then you build enough resources with your wood mill and your ore so that you can build these buildings. And in these buildings, there's a special building called your armory or the barracks, and then you could raise your army once it gets to a certain level, and once you train your troops and have enough people there, then you could go out and go attack people and do alliances. And so it was a very involved game for its time. And we were the first game that allowed people to chat across people who were not friends on Facebook. I think the chat room was really incredible, as well as having real coordinates on a map to map to where you are in location. And that played a lot in strategy, and it just pushed the strategy so much deeper. So it wasn't just a gifting app, it was much deeper than that. And it was one of the first of its kind. I remember when we invited, we were running a little bit low on cash, so we said, hey, let's invite our friends and family. First, they'll probably ingratiate themselves to us. Second, they'll probably hold back punches and be really nice. It was the worst user testing I'd ever gone through. I told my CEO afterwards, I said, I'd rather have been waiting in line at the DMV than to sit there and watch this. You think your friends and family hold back punches, but they did not. They were confused, they were really upset, they kept complaining about something as small as the artwork, and we're like, oh my gosh, this just is not going to work out. But reality is you know what, this was the direction we were going in, we fixed what we could, and we said, you know what, it doesn't make sense to change now, let's see, and we launched it. And it was amazingly successful for us. So we grew over time, but what we knew what was successful was that we were directly monetizing our users. In other words, we were able to see and give value directly to our users without trying to keep on building up all of these page views. And what was so exciting for me is finally I was able to co-create a game. I was also able to create content within the game. I didn't have to wait for a team to win or heroes to come back with a better script. I can just keep on going. So I remember in Thanksgiving time when we knew it was going to be a hit was we were watching just the admin board go, and I think we got about $7,000, and we had never seen anything like that from within a day from our ads. We just are used to seeing 2 cents, 3 cents, and multiplication of multiplication. But our greatest success also led to some of our failures. Facebook came along. Well, we were on Facebook, but they came along and they enacted a 30% tax. So for those who weren't there at the beginning, a lot of people, they always promised developers that there would not be a 30% tax. But as you know, their platform was getting bigger, it totally makes sense that they would want to tax it. Unfortunately for us, we had set our business model a certain way and our spending a certain way so that the 30% tax, no matter how we sliced it, would have a very unhappy outcome. So it wasn't a very happy situation. And how we were able to figure out that this 30% tax would impact us very gravely was a little bit about this model. And this is a model that I think if you are doing a business where you directly ask money from your direct customers, this is something that I think you should try to figure out as soon as possible and always be learning about this, which is know your LTV, which is your lifetime value. For us, we knew it up to a certain point. We knew what the payback period was. And then also know your cost of customer acquisition, like how much does it cost? And always keep your cost of customer acquisition below your lifetime value. So our biggest weakness was actually our biggest strength through this whole thing. We were not a viral app. I could not for the life of me get my mother and my sister to play my game, mainly because it just didn't have viral things to it. It really appealed to a mid-core audience. And I was always so jealous of the Candy Crushes, of Farmvilles, because everybody just knew about them. And it was so easy for people to pick up. But the thing that they have within their games that we didn't, that started working towards our advantage, was that they were able to use the K factor or the virality factor. So when I send an invite to somebody and it sends to 10 more, then that invite behaves like a great multiplier. But the problem with that factor, that K factor that does virality, is really there is very much an assumption that's based in there. So for us, we were able to quickly find that out. And so we moved very quickly onto mobile games. And we're the only Facebook company, gaming company, that was successfully able to move on to mobile games. And we became the top grossing app of 2012. So that really beat out the Angry Birds, Facebook, Pandora, and it really ushered in a whole new wave of in-app purchased games and other types of apps as a result. So just remember that your largest success can become your largest failure. And I know that sounds sad. But on the flip side, you can certainly remember that your largest failure can also become your largest success. But if you take everything that you learn and put it into everything forward, I'll hope to see all of you on your next 10-year overnight success. Thank you.